What's happening, friends? It's another edition of Orange Weekly, presented by Crouse Health. How's everybody doing? How's your Thursday going? Happy NFL Draft Day, by the way. Something we are going to talk about from a Syracuse perspective. And since it is Draft Day, there it is, friends. Vontae Mack, no matter what. Shout out to those of you that get that reference right there. Underrated sports movie, in my humble opinion. We got a lot to talk about today. NFL draft. This could be Syracuse's best haul in the NFL draft in a decade. But there's one big question that I don't have the answer to, and I am as intrigued as anybody. It has to do with Sean Tucker. So we will discuss that. If you happen to have, $3 million burning a hole in your pocket and you want to donate it to Syracuse University, Syracuse Athletics, what is the best use of that money? That is something we are going to discuss coming up here. We're going to talk some lacrosse. There is no question that the Syracuse men's lacrosse team has to beat Duke on Saturday if it is going to make the NCAA tournament. That is not in question. They're still going to need some help if they do that. But can you mark this season a success no matter what happens on that field? The Syracuse women's lacrosse team, winners in the ACC tournament yesterday, look to kind of continue to bounce back from that loss to Boston College and move into the NCAA tournament as strong as they can be. All those things up for debate, but the great thing about Orange Weekly is you guys can talk about whatever you want, hop in the comments, react to what we're saying, ask your own questions, add your own comments, kind of an open forum as we chat over the next half hour or so. If you're watching us live, you can do that. If you're watching us somewhere in the future on YouTube, much appreciated as well. So let's start with that question that I brought up, okay? We are in an NIL era, name, image, and likeness in the world of college athletics. And if you happen to have a couple $1 million burning a hole in your pocket, I think it's an interesting debate about where the best use of that money is. And I just want to read you this story quickly that we had up on syracuse.com this week in case you missed it. From our friend Emily Liker, who writes, Syracuse Athletics announced a new $3 million donation Tuesday that will support the John A. Lally Athletics Complex and the JMA Wireless Dome Transformation Project. The donation comes from trustee and alum Ed Pitinella, now the president and CEO of Home Properties, a real estate management company, and his family. And Ed, I apologize if I said your name incorrectly there. I believe it's Pitinella. Part of the funding will go towards continued work on phase 1 of the Lally Athletics Complex, which there was a ribbon cutting ceremony for the facility in late February. The other will go to the JMA Wireless Dome, including the Mirren Victory Court. It includes upgrading the seating in the venue, a process which, as you said, could begin following commencement ceremonies this year. Okay. So what's the best use of that money? Because both are necessary. Chris jumps in. He says, buy a Hunter Dickinson for $3 million as Syracuse basketball continues to look for a center in the transfer portal with Jesse Edwards gone to West Virginia, right? And I think that's the intriguing debate, Chris. If I'm a donor, do I want to make a lasting impact? You're either donating to name, image, and likeness, or you're donating essentially to infrastructure, facilities, right? If you make improvements to the JMA Wireless Dome, in this case, seating, that's something that will last 20 years, maybe longer than that, right? If you donate to the John A. Lally Athletics Complex, you're donating to facilities. Facilities are important. This used to be the hot debate. It's still a debate that needs to be had in the world of college sports, right? But what I heard for so long, and it's slowed down a little bit, not that it doesn't happen now, but all we talk about, it seems now, is NIL, and NIL is critical. It's important. All the discussions we've had about that are valid, and all the worries about Adam Weitzman stepping away and what Syracuse has in its collectives and all that, that is all a worthy conversation. So if I could offer something here, and look, it's your money. You can do what you want with it. Who amongst us hasn't had $3 million to decide to do what to do with, right? It's a nice perk of life. How about both, right? How about both? How about you can split it any way you want, but let's just say $1.5 million to infrastructure, $1.5 million to Syracuse's collectives, which, by the way, I was not aware of this. I am now aware of this as we continue to learn in this process. So when you donate to a collective, it's not a situation where they just do what they want with the money. You can actually earmark that money. You can donate whatever it is to the 315 Collective or Athletes Who Care, the two Syracuse collectives. And the Athletes Who Care people don't like it being called a collective. It's a collective. I hate to tell you guys. If you call it Athletes Who Care, it just sounds like a charity. Like you gotta spice up the branding on that a little bit. But that's a whole different topic for a different day. You can't allocate that money. Okay, let's say I got $3 million. I pop it in there and I'm like, that needs to go to X, Y, and Z. You can't do that. Just like I brought up a moment ago with the donation that was made, you can allocate it to certain things, right? Okay, great. Why not both? Now, I get it. The NIL thing, per Chris's comment, let's say you buy Hunter Dickinson, who's probably the best center in the transfer portal, right? That expires pretty quickly. In his case, it's 1 year. What will that one player do for 1 year for Syracuse basketball versus the lasting investment in facilities? I don't think there's a right answer to this question, right? I mean, that's why I say split it down the middle in the here and now. While NIL still what it is what it is before they put in guardrails, and who knows if that's even coming, right? Before they essentially put a salary cap on this thing, I think you got to go both. They're both important. Infrastructure, I get it. Facilities, totally get it. You can't fall behind in that arms race. The Lally complex looks amazing these days. The Ensley Center is, certainly a capable indoor practice facility that has helped football. It's helped lacrosse. It's, I'm not going to sit here and do indoor practice facility rankings. It's certainly up to standards in college sports these days. The Dome is amazing. The Dome has undergone an amazing transformation. Once they figure out the wireless situation, as JMA Wireless is working on now, it's going to be even better. The scoreboard's incredible. It looks better in that place. Yeah, the Dome is always going to have some flaws. It has air conditioning now. The seating's going to be better. Like everything you've asked for as a fan is actually happening, right? But I think in this, it's almost like there's a clock ticking on this. I'm not trying to tell people what to do with their money, right? So here's what I found interesting about this. When I tweeted that very story, I think I actually tweeted SU Athletics story, but when I noted, okay, here's a $3 million donation, it's going to facilities, right? And I'm going to pull up the tweet here. The Lally complex, not the Lally complex, that's the name of the building. The John Lally Fund. Give me a second here to pull up the tweet. Here it is. So just give me 1 second here, guys. Yeah, here it is. So the Lally Foundation tweets fantastic and loves seeing the media feature the actual donors to SU Athletics. Actual in caps, right? So look, one thing that I have certainly learned and gotten a lot of feedback on in the past couple of weeks since writing a couple of things about Adam Weitzman exiting as Syracuse's most high-profile donor, not necessarily their biggest donor, but certainly their most well-known donor. I don't think there's any question about that, right? There's a lot of people that have been upset that Adam, A, didn't give the money that people felt that he did, and that B, he wasn't giving it directly to the university, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, agree or disagree. There were some people out there that felt it would have been of better use to give the money directly to a collective, to give it to the university. Adam didn't do it that way. And Adam had his reasons for that, namely that he wanted to control where his money was going. And, he's the boss. He's the one doing it. He's not, it's the old theory, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Again, agree or disagree with that philosophy. That's what Adam told me. That's why he did not give to the collectives. He likes the collectives. He appreciates what they're trying to do, but he wants to see directly where his money's going. If he's making deals with players, NIL, otherwise, within the boundaries of the rules, of course. And Adam always checked with compliance every single time he made a move, right? Which I think he needs to be given credit for. I understand that. I would be the same way if I was in that position financially, right? If I'm going to give you $3 million, I better know where every penny of that money's going, right? And there's ways you can do that both ways. It's a fascinating debate to me. So I think the answer in the short term is you got to do both, because the collectives that Syracuse has right now, they cannot keep up. And those are not my words. Just go read the story that Donna DeToda wrote recently about collectives, where a gentleman by the name of Mike Bristol, who's one of the I wouldn't even know what his title is, but he's somebody that actually is in charge of the 315 collective in this case. I think he's the co-founder with another gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment, and I apologize for that. But he even said in that article, they're behind. They need more money. That Syracuse is not, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can go read the quotes, but it was as clear as could be, like, we don't have the money other collectives do. That's the 315. Athletes who care, they don't have the money that other collectives do. They have, what I would consider to be a sizable collective. I think they just recently got another big donation. I don't know if they're going to make that public or not, but listen, they're not up to what they need to be standards-wise, right? When you're competing, even in the ACC with the Clemsons of the world, right? So that's my point here. Again, you do what you want with your money. If you feel giving it to the university as an alum, as somebody that has the means, makes you feel better because it's a long-term investment, I totally get that. I really do. But you need Jimmy's and Joe's and Jonies and Jamies, I guess, on the women's side of things, right? All go across all boards here. You need athletes. You need stars. You need people that come in and make an impact. Now, see, that is a more risky investment, right? Let's say you buy Hunter Dickinson. Hunter Dickinson's here for a year. Let's say Jesse Edwards got his money. What does that do for Syracuse for 1 year? This is a team that let's talk about basketball specifically for a moment here. Basketball has not finished higher than 6th in the ACC since they entered the league. The first year they did good, have not finished higher than 6 since then. Is that worth it? Is that worth it not only for what it does in the short term for that team next year, but the message it sends for future recruits and transfers that this is where they're going to get their money? There is a collective there, right? And they can look at that and they can say, okay, I can make some money that way. I think the next big step here, guys, the next big question that's going to be answered is what happens with Judah Mintz, right? In this world of NIL and, everything that is on the table these days. Because if I'm Judah Mintz, I think I've got a lot of leverage here. Because I can either go to professional basketball in some capacity. It's still a question mark about whether he'll get drafted or not. Okay. But if Judah Mintz wants to play professional basketball, he'll be in professional basketball somehow, some way next year. In theory, he can make more money here, right? But the collectives don't have, if I'm just going to throw a number out there for argument's sake. Okay. Let's say that Judah Mintz wants $1 million. Okay. Just let's throw it out there. Some guys are getting that kind of money. Jesse reportedly got about $800,000. I think Joe Girard, who Mike Waters noted today is down to either LSU or Clemson for his transfer destination, is going to be in 6 figures. How about this? I'll say 500,000. Let's say Judah Mintz names his number. He wants $500,000. The Syracuse have that money to pay him. I think it would be difficult to come up with. Now, Jesse was a unique case because of the international status, the F1 visa. I totally understand that, but they found a way around that. And West Virginia certainly found a way around that. Judah doesn't have that complication. You give Judah Mintz $500K based on what you have now, short of somebody else swooping in and giving him the money. That is going to make a major dent on what you have collective-wise, based on what I know about the collectives. So this is the question you've got to ask yourself, especially in the short term. Investing, in infrastructure and facilities, it's all important. It's all part of the game. But you need Jimmy's and Joe's and Jonies and Jamies coming in as well, right? So let's ponder that a little bit more. As Brian says, could there be a GoFundMe towards a collective? Brian, you can actually donate directly to the 315 collective. You can go do that right now if you wanted to. So there is a way to directly donate there. That's essentially the GoFundMe, right? So I kind of understand your question there and where that's at, but you actually can donate directly. Okay. Let's move on to football. It's draft day. I don't know if you guys can see. Got my Bills sweatshirt on. I actually have no idea what the Bills are going to do tonight. They don't really have the draft capital to trade up. They've only got 6 picks this year. I think they're going to take a wide receiver. I hope they take a wide receiver. I'd be happy with a linebacker. And then we'll see what the rest of the draft brings. But what we could see, maybe starting Thursday, I tweeted some rumbles. Matthew Bergeron might be working his way into the end of the first round of the NFL draft. But what we could see over the next 3 days is Syracuse have its biggest draft haul in a decade. You go back to 2013. Okay, I'm going to go through this quickly with you guys. So I brought up Syracuse's draft history. Let's just go through the last 10 years. Okay, 2013, Justin Pugh, Ryan Nassib, Shamarko Thomas. Justin Pugh, the last first-round pick for Syracuse football. 2014, Jay Bromley, Marquise Sproul, 3rd and 5th round. 2016, the legend, Dixon for Heisman, Riley Dixon. 2018, Zaire Franklin, 7th-round pick, now one of the captains of the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Slayton got picked in the 7th round in 2019. 2020, Alton Robinson, 5th round, Seattle. Sterling Hoffrichter, 7th round to Atlanta. He's now in the XFL. Hoffrichter is. 2021, Andre Sisco, Ife Melifonwu. And last year, no one was drafted. Now, there's a few undrafted free agents on that list, too. Trill Williams, noted, who did not play last year, unfortunately, due to an injury. So what you just heard there is an okay draft history in the last decade. It's okay. It's not up to speed. It's not what it should be. But what you could hear this year are 4 players taken in the NFL draft. Matthew Bergeron is absolutely going to be selected. He could be picked in the end of the first round. That's not what I would predict. It's not what I would put money on, but he's not getting past day 2. This is a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Unquestionably, he's one of the highest rated interior linemen. He can play tackle. He can play guard. I think he's just somebody that certain teams are definitely salivating over, and it's going to be a great weekend for Matthew Bergeron and company. He'll be the first one off the board. I think the second player off the board is going to be Garrett Williams. Despite the injury, both Andre Sisco and Trill Williams certainly know what that's like to be drafted despite an injury. Garrett is one of the most fundamentally sound technique cornerbacks, and there's a lot of cornerbacks in this draft, but he's right up there. He's in the top 15, 20 most boards, most experts looking at it. I'd be surprised if he got past the 4th round. I think he's going to go on day 2, which is the 2nd and 3rd round. But if he fell into the 4th round, that wouldn't be a huge surprise. He's definitely going to get drafted. Michael Jones, and I'm saving Sean Tucker for last year. I haven't forgot about him, guys. Michael Jones, I don't know. I feel like the Zaire Franklin path could be it. I think he could get picked in the 7th round. I wouldn't be stunned if he didn't, but I wouldn't be stunned if he did either. Like, he's kind of at the tail end of a long list of linebackers. He went in a little early. I like Michael Jones. I think that dude is a baller. Literally, I think he gets to the football. I think he's got the speed to hang in the National Football League. He's got the tenacity to hang in the National Football League. That's just one of those guys that pops. You watch certain players and you kind of know, like, okay, that dude's pro. And I think that's Michael Jones. He's going to have a little bit of a fight on his hands. He's probably going to have to battle in a camp as a 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent. But Zaire Franklin took that path. Trill Williams took that path. There's a few guys that have made it that way. So I think he's going to stick. I think Andre Schmidt is going to be picked up in a camp. Kickers typically don't get picked in the draft. They've got to go the free agent route. But I think Schmidt's going to go into a camp and he's going to compete. The big mystery, Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker had a pro day earlier this week in Syracuse, his own pro day. 4 teams were there: the Bills, Giants, Jets, and Arizona Cardinals, as opposed to the pro day that Syracuse had for all of its prospects, where every team in the National Football League was present. Sean Tucker had to get cleared medically the second time around, so he did not get cleared medically at the NFL Combine. Returned to Indianapolis a couple of weeks later. There's kind of a second round for players that weren't medically eligible for the NFL Combine. He got cleared there, right? His camp has been silent. Nothing. His dad will not talk. His agent will not talk. His trainer will not talk. And at the very least, that is strange. It's not strange for Sean Tucker, right? It's not strange in that vein because he's a pretty quiet kid, right? That's why the tweets were so famous. Sean Tucker's just never been much of a talker. He's just kind of a quiet guy, right? So it's not strange in that vein, but this is the time of year where you want to sell your guys, right? Especially Tucker, who, Boy, I saw one Chris Sims put Tucker in his top 5 list of running backs. I've seen other lists that have Tucker at 15. There's a big, fat question mark surrounding Sean Tucker. Now, all it takes is one team to like you somewhere, I would say in the 5th or 6th round. But if you've got medical questions and you're not talking, now maybe he's talking to teams, because there's a lot of stuff that teams have done their own diligent work on that we're not privy to. But you don't want this surrounding you going into the draft. You don't want any uncertainties. You don't want any medical questions. You don't want to read stories like our friend Emily Leiker wrote this week that Tucker's camp is not talking, right? I still think he's going to get picked. Despite some of the medical issues that surround that, I think Tucker will get picked. I think Tucker will have the advantage of not having to be a primary back. And I understand the use of the running back in the NFL. I don't know. It's kind of hit or miss these days. Like Bijan Robinson's going to go in the first round. You typically, the narrative now is you don't take a running back in the first round, but a few guys have emerged in recent years that you'd be stupid not to take in the first round. And I think Bijan Robinson's one of those guys. And then the rest of the way, you kind of work your way up. Tucker is great. First step, making that first guy miss, burst of speed in the secondary. He had a great workout on Monday. Checked all the boxes in terms of reps. Now, he didn't run the 40, which is another question. Why wouldn't you run the 40 at your own pro day? He didn't do the shuttle drill. He didn't do a few other things. He lifted. He did a couple of other things. So he's the ticket to me. Not only himself and what his career is going to be from here, but he is the ticket to answer the question in the sense of, is Syracuse going to have its best draft in a decade? And therefore, is Dino Babers going to have his best draft as Syracuse football head coach? I mean, I just went through it, guys. I'll go through it again. Since Dino took over as head coach, these are the draft picks: Riley Dixon, Zaire Franklin, Chris Slayton, Sterling Hoff-Richter, Alton Robinson, Iffy Melifonwu, Andre Sisco. If you could add 3, maybe even 4 names to that list over the course of 3 days at the NFL draft, it's not just the players that get selected, right? It's not just that Syracuse has – what it is Syracuse has a presence on that television screen for the next 3 days. One of the most highly rated sports events out there. Not just in the players that get picked, but when Mel Kiper Jr.'s top 5 available at this position is hanging on that screen for what can be a couple of hours, and there's Sean Tucker's name at running back, and there's Garrett Williams' name at cornerback, and there's Bergeron's going to go pretty early, but until he gets picked, right? Michael Jones at linebacker, Andre Schmidt at kicker, whatever the case may be. Syracuse's name on the screen for 3 days at the NFL draft. That is not something that we have seen frequently in the last decade. It's been in spurts and spots. Frankly, there's a couple of years there where only a punter got selected. Punters are people too. God bless them. But this feels like the first kind of meat and potatoes, spread out running back, cornerback, offensive lineman, linebacker, good positions for Syracuse. And the key there is you need consistency. This is a selling point. You've got to show that Syracuse football will send you to the National Football League. And if you have a year like this, next year, you've got Aronde Gatson, who's going to be, by all accounts, a high draft pick. You're going to have, I think, Caleb Okechukwu in that conversation. I think Marlo Wax is going to be in that conversation. Maybe Justin Barron. I'm not sold on Garrett Schrader as an NFL prospect at this point. He's free to prove me wrong. He certainly has the skill set, and that you want a mobile quarterback these days and a big quarterback these days in the NFL. But I think Garrett Schrader's got a lot of work to do to work his way into that conversation at the most important position in the National Football League. You're going to see 5 quarterbacks taken maybe in the first 6 picks in this draft tonight. So one way or the other, I think it's going to be a good weekend for Syracuse football. I just wonder how many guys get picked, and I'm really wondering about the Tucker equation, right? Because there's just too many questions surrounding him going in. But as they say, guys, all it takes is one team, and Vontae Mack, no matter what. Let's close with some lacrosse thoughts, and I'm just going to highlight a couple other good questions you guys have put up here about some of the NIL discussion and some of the other things that we have talked about throughout the course of the show. Syracuse men's lacrosse is unquestionably in a must-win situation Saturday at Duke. They will not make the NCAA tournament if they don't make Duke. Period. And if they don't beat Duke, pardon me. Period. End of story. Even if they beat Duke, they need some help. Okay. I would encourage you to read my story. Going to give myself a little plug here. I talked to Patrick Stevens this week. Patrick is, I love Patrick. He's has such a wide range of talents. He writes about a number of things in the college sports world: football, basketball, lacrosse. He's a noted basketball bracketologist. Recently, he was the most accurate bracketologist, if you will, in college basketball. He also does bracketology for lacrosse and really breaks it down well. And I asked Patrick this week, what is Syracuse's best case scenario? They got to beat Duke, and then he gave me a list of about 5 or 6 other things that's got to happen. The teams that have to lose to kind of eliminate themselves from the conversation here. So I'm not betting money on it. Syracuse at 9-6 with a win over Duke is intriguing. The problem is Syracuse just doesn't have enough quality wins. They have Princeton and North Carolina on their resume right now. Add Duke to that, who's number 1 in RPI, number 2 in the country. Syracuse's RPI is going to be somewhere in the top 20. These are good things. Another good thing that Syracuse has going for it, they have no bad losses. There is not a loss on that schedule that hurts them. The problem is they're 0-5 against top 5 teams. Their schedule is too vanilla. Even if you add Duke to the equation, I don't think that's enough on its own. But if some things happen, some teams lose, weird stuff goes down. Remember, Selection Sunday is not till next Sunday. Then perhaps you could see Syracuse sneak its way in. But this conversation just dies on arrival if they don't beat Duke. That being said, Syracuse will have finished with a winning record after a losing record last year. Gary Gates got this thing going in the right direction. They've already doubled their wins from a year ago, no matter what happens against Duke. The young talent on this team, the swagger that's back on this team, I think the arrow points up in almost every way for Syracuse men's lacrosse at this point, no matter what happens against Duke. But who knows, friends? Weird stuff happens. Maybe they beat Duke, get a little help. The selection committee puts them in. Weirder things have happened, friends. I'm just not going to bet on it. As for the women's team, it's been interesting to see what's happened in their last 2 games. So they lose to Boston College, undefeated season on the line, sold out crowd at the SU soccer stadium. They've got a 6-goal lead, and they lose it. And they lose to Boston College, and their undefeated season comes crashing down, right? Look, no harm, no foul. Syracuse, BC, Northwestern, North Carolina, these teams, you can throw Stony Brook in there. You can throw, James Madison gets in there a little bit, but these teams just beat up each other, right? It's an elite group you've got to come out of. Syracuse happens to be, until this week, the number 1 team and the one that kind of stood out from that pack, but we're not talking about a huge lead there. So they beat Syracuse women's lacrosse, now beat Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament yesterday, 14-12. That was a close game right to the end. Megan Tyrell, couple of goals. Syracuse's all-time leading scorer now, by the way. Congratulations to Megan Tyrell. That is an incredible accomplishment for her, and continuing to build on that in this postseason. She scores a couple of goals in the 4th. Syracuse pulls away for a 14-12 win over Virginia Tech, a team that they clobbered earlier this year. Here's the common denominator, guys. I've said this all along. I'm going to say it again. Delaney Schweitzer is the difference. Syracuse has a bevy of offensive talent, but you simply can't outscore people and win a national championship. You might win a few games that way in the postseason. You might even beat North Carolina again, or a Boston College again, or a Northwestern again, but you will not win a title that way. You need a goalie to make saves. What I've seen the last 2 games is Delaney Schweitzer has been just off her game enough that it's kept both Virginia Tech and Boston College in it. Boston College essentially ran the same play over and over again. And Kayla Traynor noticed it. She called it out. She talked about it. You learn right to the bitter end here of the schedule. So they have to make that adjustment. Schweitzer didn't make enough point-blank saves there and enough on free positions, right? Virginia Tech, 5 of 7 free position goals scored on. Schweitzer's made a lot of saves in that situation. Now, she ended up with 7 saves in that game. She only had 3 in the first half. I think Schweitzer and I don't want this to be a heavy criticism of Schweitzer, because she has been incredible this year. She has been arguably the best goalie in the country this year, but that's the standard she's set. So when she's not the best goalie in the country, or sometimes not even the best goalie in her own game, because she was not the best goalie in the Syracuse-Boston College game, that can make the difference. As talented as Syracuse is, you just can't outscore people. You need your goalie to make the stops to give you that separation. By the way, I think she's going to do that where it matters most. If you want to take a little bit of a step back, this is when you do it. Losing to Boston College in the regular season, I mean, it stunk because it was at home, and it would have been an incredible thing to finish out an undefeated season at home on the night Megan Tyrell becomes the all-time leading scorer. But so what? ACC tournament, who cares if you lose in the ACC tournament? You want to be playing your best lacrosse going into the postseason. I completely understand that. You don't want, doubts creeping into your head, but you also want to know what kind of adjustments you have to make. What you've seen from BC, what you see from Virginia Tech, and we'll see how far the women's lacrosse team goes here in the ACC tournament, is you got to make tweaks right to the bitter end here. So that's the standard they've set, right? If one of the best goalies in the country is off her game just enough, it's going to open up that window for teams to give Syracuse a punch in the nose. But frankly, Syracuse needs to be tuned up at its best when it matters most in the tournament. And by the way, their first, it's the tournament, it's one and done. But it was smart to play at the SU soccer stadium outdoors, because that's where they're going to have to play what I think will be 2 games. I don't think Syracuse is losing in the first round. But should they make 2 games, I'll be careful there. They will both be played outdoors at the SU soccer stadium. Why? Graduation. Graduation is going to take away the JMA Wireless Dome as a spot for Syracuse to play. So that's what I'm talking about with adjustments and tweaks right to the end there. Kayla Trainer was smart to play that game outside, so they were used to it. They're playing outdoors this week at the ACC tournament. They're going to have to play outdoors in the NCAA tournament, not only at home, but as they advance through the tournament. That's when the best adjustments and the most important adjustments have to be made. I still think this team's winning the national championship. Let me say that after I was a little critical there of this team. I still think they're going to do it. I still think Schweitzer plays her best game. This offense is great. I didn't mean to brush aside the fact it's one of the most high-scoring teams in the country. I mean, they have Megan Tyrell and Megan Carney and Emma Ward and Emma Tyrell and Olivia Adamson stepping up. And, draw controls are still somewhat of an issue for this team, but I think scoring can overcome that. It's just taking advantage of possessions and getting what you need out of your goaltender. I still think they can do that. I still think they will do that. I'm ride or die with this team. I think they're going to win the national championship, and I'm going to stick with that until I'm proven otherwise. But we have seen a couple of signs lately that maybe they're not the dominant force we thought they were. But like I said, in that quartet of teams, Syracuse, Northwestern, North Carolina, Boston College, you could throw a dart with a blindfold on it, one of those 4 teams, and one of them is going to win the national championship. I just happen to think the dart lands on Syracuse this year. As Mike says in a great comment to close out on, our guy Mike in El Paso, always great to see you. Like the legend Jim Boeheim says, you win for the fans, you play for the NCAA tournament, no matter what sport. There you have it, my friends. We will end on that note on another fun-filled edition here of Orange Weekly, presented by our friends at Crouse Health. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Sun shining outside my window here. Weather's been decent in central New York this week. A little bit on the chilly side, hanging in the 50s, but, spring is slowly but surely springing, if you will, here in central New York, and weather's getting better. It feels like kind of lacrosse postseason weather out there. We'll see what happens at the draft. This NIL discussion is going to continue to be fascinating, and where that goes and how people react to it. And we didn't really talk a lot of SU hoops today, but there could be some things cooking in the portal. There's been some interesting recruiting news out there that, of course, we'll be tracking for you on syracuse.com, and all the stuff that you just don't see coming that pops up here. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of it. We do this live Thursdays at noon Eastern time on these channels you're watching now, or you can always watch whenever you want in the future on YouTube. I would encourage you to subscribe to our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page. You get the notifications on Facebook when we go live. I do this on my Twitter page at Brent Axe Media, and we put up a post on syracuse.com. So always easy to find the show if you can't be here live, but appreciate you being here. And Bill, I appreciate the nice comments, my friends. Appreciate you being here as well. Enjoy the rest of your week, my friend. Enjoy the weekend. And thanks for watching another fun-filled edition of Orange Weekly presented by Crouse Health. We'll talk to you guys next time, okay?